Good morning and welcome to the Guerra Plaza Revitalization Advisory Committee meeting, December 18th. This is a special meeting and we'll be running a little bit long. And if we could start please with a roll call.
Okay, Chair Snedden?
Here.
Vice Chair Wiscombe?
Here.
Commissioner Drury?
Here.
Commissioner House?
Here.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Longstreet?
Here.
Councilmember Harmon?
Here.
Commissioner Perry?
Present.
Committee Member Peterson?
Present.
And Committee Member Edelman. Great, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start with announcements and any agenda review or changes. Okay, hearing none. So just we're going to move into our agenda items. We're continuing discussion that we had previously of items that were presented, but we didn't have the full time to finish discussing. So the lighting, landscaping, and kiosk will be the main topics today, and then we'll move into what our recommendations might be and if we're ready to make those recommendations, and we'll work on that toward the end of the meeting. So with that, I'd like to hand it to Brad Hess to lead us through the draft conceptual design.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. And Leaf, if you are ready to share your screen, let's pull up the presentation. Excellent. Get myself situated. Well, good morning, and thank you for being here. This is, we have a lot to cover today, so thank you in advance for not only your time, but your energy, because we're gonna need it. But we are very much looking forward to this discussion. But as we begin today, I hope you'll indulge me just a few minutes as I remind us what has transpired to get us to where we are today. I was looking again at the book Plaza de la Guerra Reconsidered, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. And I was just reminded of how many times this plaza has been looked at and reimagined. Really since the 1920s to today, so many designs have been thought about, but very few have been implemented. And the condition of the plaza now shows us why this is such an important project for us to complete for our city, to bring this very important space back to its proper name of the town square with beauty and ties to the history that surrounds it. So it was, again, just some history. It was just under 2 years ago, believe it or not, in January of 2019, that the City Council formally directed staff to begin work on this project as a standalone project. We hired Suzanne Elledge to help with the public outreach, and we hired RRM Design Group to do the design services. In March of 2019, we held the public outreach workshop at Casa de la Guerra. And the information that we collected from the 150 people or so that attended has served as the baseline for the design and really for this committee. And then over the following months, we met with stakeholders and community groups and continued to think through the many different options for this plaza. Now, this committee was formed to bring together the different boards and commissions that would want a voice and a seat at the table to help guide this design process. And over these last 8 meetings, beginning in November 8th of last year, this committee has, in my opinion, done an outstanding job of working its way through the design ideas, prioritizing, visualizing, really listening to one another, and listening to public comment, and then allowing the design team to do what we hired them to do. And just to clarify, we're creating a baseline concept design that will then proceed into the city's development application process, where the Historic Landmarks Commission will be the governing body for the project. And you may recall that 2 meetings ago, I set a goal for us to complete our concept plan by today's meeting. And while we know the design won't be completely finished, I'm really hopeful that we can come to consensus today that this concept plan, after all of our discussion, is far enough along to be released from this committee and begin the city's review process. So if we could move to that second slide. So our goal for today is to finish our discussions really on the topics, as Chair Snedden said, on the topics that we began last meeting, and then make a recommendation to the City Council with favorable comments that this concept plan move into the city's development application review process. So we are scheduled to provide the City Council with an update on February 2nd, where we will show them the concept design and answer questions. But we're also going to be requesting that this committee be allowed to continue to meet on an as-needed basis. And I'll explain more on that in a minute. But here are the next steps for the concept plan. Once we get out of this committee, we will then submit the concept plan to the HLC for their concept review. We will submit a pre-application review team package so that community development and the internal groups can review it and provide us with feedback. We need an archaeological report that would be accepted by HLC, and that will include a phase 3. And then historic structures report needs to be updated and accepted by HLC. And eventually the project design is approved by HLC. And you'll notice that we don't go to Planning Commission, we don't go to City Council, we don't go to Parks and Rec other than for information. But that's why it's all the more important for all of those groups to be represented here today by you. So going to slide 3, if you would. Here's our agenda for today. So provided you with a brief recap, but the past advisory committee, as you know, we showed you the entire presentation. Then we discussed the art nodes and the focal point and the surface materials, and that was followed by public comment. But we pushed it off, the discussion of the kiosk, the trees, and the lighting until today. So that's what we'll be talking about. But the art for the plaza, as we noted last meeting, is just a major topic. There's so many things that we need to think through and provide parameters for that we think it's better served having that topic be a standalone topic for a future meeting. So we're proposing to table that until another time. And another idea that was raised last meeting was swapping the focal point with the splash pad location. And we have a slide on that in just a bit, so we can talk about it then. But this is our agenda for the day. So we'll talk about the kiosk, the trees, the lighting. Somewhere in there, we're going to have a break because this is going to be a long meeting. We'll have public comment. We'll review the next steps again. And again, if we've reached consensus to the point where we're all comfortable, we would then create the recommendation to the city. So if we could move to slide 4. So I just want to make sure that we're all grounded in why we're here. De la Guerra Plaza celebrates and honors the historic heart of our city and provides the flexibility to serve our community's diverse social, cultural, historic, economic, and environmental vitality. We just need to make sure that we're running everything through this filter of these 5 vitalities. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Leaf for a few minutes. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Brad. Good morning, everyone. I'll be presenting a couple of things shortly, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a summary of what we've done since the last meeting. Some of which was prompted by questions we got, some of which was just ongoing process. But we did run the design through and reviewed it with our architectural historian consultants at Post Hazeltine, who I think many of you are familiar with, just to checks and balances, make sure that we were still on course with appropriate historic context and The good news is we are. There's obviously a lot of nuance that is still to be ironed out, but no major red flags. So that's encouraging. We met with, we had a couple of meetings regarding accessibility in the plaza. We presented the concept to the city's commission, accessibility commission. It was well received. And we also had a meeting with a representative of the Braille Institute on site, and we walked around with the plans and talked specifically about how the plaza could be best designed for people with vision impairment. We have reached out, made initial contact with representatives of the two Chumash tribes that are local to the site, and that will be ongoing discussion as we move forward. But they were very interested and eager to participate. So that initial contact has been made and will be ongoing. And finally, we've done more product research. As you know from prior meetings, we're looking into the notion of the underground trash storage and collection. And we have some more sort of understanding of the mechanical requirements of the splash pad. So that's kind of what's been going on in the background, just to let you know. Not going to dwell on this because you've all seen it many times, but just as a refresher, and if there's anyone joining today that's new to the process, this is the coloured area represents the sort of limits of our project area. And so it includes Stalk Placita to the right, De La Guerra Street between Anacapa and State, and the plaza itself. And just to reiterate, this sort of the end of De La Guerra Street closest to Anacapa, along the City Hall frontage, is in flux right now because we're waiting for the pandemic to be over, so we can do a realistic traffic study of what's happening in that area in terms of parking. Zooming in, this is the main sort of features that we've discussed and will continue to come up today, no doubt. So just to let you know, this slide is in here if we need to come back to it at any point for reference. The main key elements are labeled. And then Brad's going to talk a little bit about this splash pad item, which was raised as a question by one of the committee members in the last meeting, and it triggered a little bit of conversation. So Brad, do you want to take this one?
Great, thank you, Leif. So this was raised as a consideration, and some of the real positive aspects of swapping these locations is that it would be seen from State Street a little bit, which could bring more of a draw from State with bringing people into the plaza. This clearly would increase the foot traffic, would activate the space, and with more people, could increase business activities for those businesses on the plaza, and just create a different atmosphere with it at that end. There was some concern expressed over the conflict of having it where it is in terms of programming with the stage events and the splash pad as well. But as we started really thinking deeply through this possibility, there are a number of things that I wanted to bring up that we need to seriously consider with this relocation. The first is the infrastructure for the splash pad itself. So the company we're using as a reference point for a splash pad utilizes a loop system between a pump room, the tank, and the pad itself. And the tank needs to be located either under or adjacent to the splash pad. The tank measures 6 feet by 20 feet, and it needs to be placed in about a 10-foot deep hole. So we're also proposing that the pump and mechanical room would be located adjacent to the restrooms down in Stalk Placita. So we would need to find a new location for that as well. In addition to the infrastructure, there's a second issue, which is really, we think, more important. And that is that location right in front of City Hall, where the other focal point is really the primary location for cultural resources that were found in the Phase 2 archaeological study. And we've been doing everything we can actually to not disturb this area in order to keep our Phase 3 down to a reasonable scope. So relocating the splash pad to that location, given the infrastructure needs, would just explode that Phase 3. So after reviewing the pros and cons, we really feel that it's best served in, if it's going to happen at all, it would be best served in the location that we have it. So we want to hear from you, and Chair Snedden, if it's possible to have a quick discussion about this now, I would really like to hear whether or not we need to keep considering this, or we can move forward with it in its current design. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hessen. I think that's a good idea to discuss it now. And let's, for this final meeting, we'll go in whatever order as you come up on the screen, and I'll be sure that we've heard from everyone before we move on. And Vice Chair Wiscombe, if you'd like to comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the infrastructure requirements, and more importantly, the cultural resources are too important to consider moving it. My preference is to leave it where it is based on those two items, and particularly the cultural resources. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you. Commissioner Reed, and then Commissioner House.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Snedden. I agree with Vice Chair Wiscombe. I don't see tremendous downside to where it's located now. There is considerable downside in moving it as presented. So I certainly wouldn't want to consider scrapping it. I think it's a tremendous amenity, and I think there could be potential conflict with the programming, but that can be overcome, in my opinion. Thank you.
And Mr. House.
I agree the cultural resources are of paramount importance, but I just feel like we don't have enough information yet. And I wonder whether or not this large tank could be in what is currently De La Guerra Street. And so, I would like to have it explored a little more instead of assuming it's going to blow up the Phase 3 archaeological report. So I feel like I'm lacking some information.
And how would that be to have it move forward in the current location and have that be something in future? Or do you want that resolved today, or will it hold up moving it forward?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't hold it up. I mean, that's a very important consideration, the location of the archaeological resources. I still think it's the better place to move it, to swap the location. So I think it should be explored some more, but if there aren't viable options, then where it is currently proposed is acceptable.
Thank you. Commissioner Longstreet.
I would prefer to leave it where it is. What we've learned today confirms my feeling, but I also feel it's a better location for the activity it generates. I think keeping that down from the De La Guerra area where, it's rented out, the historic area is sometimes rented out privately. We have City Hall where more of our political activities happen, where we have rallies and things like that on the steps. It just seems like we're crowding it all into that area, and I like it down at the other end where if we're having an event and it's turned off and you're using the arcade, it just seems more comfortable to me.
Thank you.
I would also agree with Commissioner Reed. It is a extremely valuable aspect of this design because it really brings families in.
Thank you. Dr. Peterson.
I also support leaving it in the current location for the same reasons that my colleagues have mentioned.
Okay, thank you. And then Councilmember Harmon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, I was just going to second what Commissioner Longstreet said. You know, I've really gone back and forth myself about the location since we first had this discussion, and I think I actually really prefer it where it is. So I'm very supportive and also seconding everyone who said that this is an incredible amenity that certainly needs to be retained. But I really support keeping it in this location and not moving the cultural resources. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Commissioner Perry. And Mr. Drury also.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Drury.
So I reluctantly would side with leaving it where it is. I like the idea from Commissioner Howes in the first place, but if there's those complications, I think we need to move past this. And I would jump on the side of leaving it where it is in the design. Thank you.
Thank you. And then did we hear from Commissioner Perry, if you have a comment? Not sure. Okay, so it sounds like we have general consensus, some reluctance, some not, that the current location is the preferred location. And it also sounded like from enough people, their support on moving this forward as an integral part of the design concept. So I think unless anybody has anything to add on that there, I think that moves forward as it is.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I may just take about 10 more seconds to address Mr. House's concerns. You know, the phase 2, basically you looked at spaces within the grass area starting at De La Guerra Street and moving toward the news press. And really that whole entire area is the area where it was their privy. It was where they, it's basically, they were throwing things away, but it's cultural resources to give us the history of that space. And it was the entire area. So really we'd like to stay above, if at all possible, the top 12 inches of soil. And we're not sure if that's feasible. Obviously we're gonna need to do some disturbance, but the splash pad would definitely get us all the way through that and put it into a deeper area with or without the tank. So it would make that whole area of phase 3. So that's really the concern. So thank you again for that. We appreciate that clarity. So as we move on, Leaf is going to walk us through this next section as we get into the trees, I believe. Nope, going into the kiosk first. Sorry. So this was brought up again, and we want to just make sure that we're all on the same page with this concept. Madam Chair, if I may, would love for this also to just be discussed at this point. I know that we're kind of going back and forth, but there are a couple of things that I've learned actually even as of yesterday. I want to just share with the group that I spoke with Keith DeMartini yesterday about just the overall debt for the city relating primarily to the police department, but talking about potentially bringing this project into that as well. And a long-term lease on this public space actually could make the debt financing taxable. So it's something that we really need to consider in terms of how this project will be financed, because if it's covered under a grant, clearly there's different rules that go along with that. But I also just wanted to throw that out there that a long-term lease could end up complicating the space. And so this is one of those topics and issues that we've been bantering about for a couple months now. And I feel like the committee is fairly divided as to the importance. Where we have come with this is we've reached out to through Nina Johnson to a couple businesses in town to confirm whether this is a viable business opportunity for them. The feedback from them initially is yes, absolutely. But State Street has changed. It was just a street when we started talking about this that was struggling, and now it's bustling in a number of different ways that we had not anticipated. So if I can turn it back to you and just have you guide this discussion, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. And I think this is the time to really sort of settle on what our recommendations might be for the kiosk. And keeping in mind also that we will have public comment before we make full recommendations. So this is discussion part. And I will hand it to Vice Chair Wiscombe. I will say for myself, I'm ready to let go of the kiosk. I think with the changes on State Street, potential changes, and with this new information and with competing businesses, it was from the center and then it moved out to the edges, and now I'm fine with it just moving its way on out. So if there are any other comments on that. So Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I totally agree. I think this has been a forced vision from the beginning of the process when it was introduced. We don't have, none of us have been terribly excited in our comments about finding a use for it. And I think there might be an opportunity down the road if it's needed to form a public-private partnership to add it to the plaza if that's the case. But I think at this point, I'm in total agreement that it's just not serving a purpose right now, and it's adding an expense. And I also think if it were put in and it failed, didn't do well, could be perceived by the public as not a good use of taxpayer dollars. So I'm totally in agreement with you that we just move it down the road now, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Longstreet.
I agree with those comments totally. The one question I would have is if there is any way we could put the infrastructure in without the activity, would it serve other uses like Old Spanish days? If it could be built in such a way that in the future, if a need came up, we would have an opportunity.
Mr. Hess?
Yes, and Commissioner Longstreet, the one idea could be just that, put in the conduit, connecting it with water, electricity, and sewer without actually connecting those utilities to it, but putting the infrastructure in so that if we did decide later to add that, the infrastructure would already be there. So yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good suggestion. Did you have further comments on that? Okay, and then Commissioner Perry? Yeah.
Right down the line, in full agreement. I've always wondered how the kiosk would be a profitable entity for anybody because of size, scope, and location. So I'm glad it's being rethought this way.
Okay. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair,
Yes.
if Commissioner Perry's done, Madam Chair, can I hop in? I don't
Yes.
have a video. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
thank you. No, I'm
Sorry about that, my fault.
Councilmember Harmon, yes.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to be different here. This is certainly not a hill that I'm interested in dying on for sure. I think you all make very good points about this. I personally still love it. I love what the sense of place that something like this could bring. And I'm personally rather attached to the idea. I love the idea of really being creative and maybe putting farmers market in there. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to really do something innovative and just really community oriented and bring a sense of place to this plaza. But with that said, I think Commissioner Longstreet's idea to put in the infrastructure would be awesome, particularly in light of the long-term lease issues. I think at the end of the day, if it can't be financed, it can't be financed. And I think that's just a pragmatic reality. that we need to keep in mind. And I think if that's some way to thread this needle, and then we see sort of what works and what doesn't, and we still have the capacity to potentially do this, maybe when that brilliant idea comes along, I would love that. And I think that could be a really great solution. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Herman. And Commissioner Reed.
Yes, Chair Snen, so I agree that we're kind of in a conflicting place here. Considering that the kiosk in its F&B use would be items would be prepped off site. The kiosk really wouldn't have any commercial infrastructure, grease trap, hood, cook line. I think with stubbing out the utilities, we can still designate that location for similar uses, bringing in temporary infrastructure that could be incredibly charming to facilitate flowers, farmers market, so all these things that are on the slide. And I think Councilmember Harmon could find the same result. I mean, in a lot of ways, it could be more impressive and more beneficial to the plaza and the community with a flexible space. It can be done, I believe, really creatively and without the potential downside.
So in favor of the infrastructure being put in place, designating the location, and moving forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner House.
I agree with that having the infrastructure is prudent for planning for the future, but otherwise, bye-bye kiosk.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Drury?
Yes, I would agree with the above comments. Stub it up and then move it out.
Thank you. And then Dr. Peterson, if you had anything to add there.
I'm in favor of letting it go as well. I like the idea of building in the infrastructure for it, but I think that the fewer new additions of architecture to the plaza, the better. And you know, I've noted that there is a pop-up holiday market in one of the existing retail spaces next to the restaurants that faces the interior of the plaza that's happening right now. And I wonder if the functions we've talked about for the kiosk could happen in an existing space like that and still serve the plaza.
Excellent, thank you. So I think we've met in the vitalities, the goal of flexibility of space and the planning of it. And I think that we've kept that in mind, and I'm comfortable. Mr. Hess, do you feel like you have the direction that you need on that? It sounds like we're ready to let the physical kiosk go, but have the infrastructure in place for the flexibility in the future. Yeah,
Absolutely. We will make that happen.
thank you.
So now I'm going to turn it back over to Leaf to walk us through the tree presentation.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, on to trees. We started talking about this last time, and this is where I think the clock ran out on us. So I wanted to just refresh your memory where we were, and we've actually got a little more specific suggestions to show you for your consideration today. So if you recall, we showed you 3 different tree species that we thought would be appropriate and not necessarily where they would be. So today we're actually going to show you some proposed layouts. We've also narrowed it down to 2 trees instead of 3. That's based on further reflection and talking to our architectural historians about appropriateness of trees. The first one that you're going to see in the plans is the Palo Verde on your screen right now. And we can talk more about particulars of it if anyone likes, but it's a smaller scale, very lacy tree that blooms pretty profusely yellow in the spring, sometimes into the summer. And it's got a kind of a beautiful green bark to it, and it's actually quite beautiful when it's not in leaf. So it is a deciduous tree. We asked the Nathan, the city arborist, and if anyone's interested, there are examples of it between Anacapa and Santa Barbara streets on De La Guerra, so just up the road. It's pretty drought tolerant. It's not native, but it's a Southwest and Baja California origin plant, and very appropriate to the character of the architecture around it. The second one is the floss silk tree, which again you see around town. And our intent here would be to use it as an accent, pop of color for some drama, but not as a primary species in the plaza. There are several examples up in Alice Keck Park and in a couple of other places. If anyone's interested, I can get you more information. It blooms fairly heavily, like the photo on the left, in the fall, which is kind of unusual. And it's briefly deciduous, which means as it's pushing out its flowers in the fall, the flowers basically push the leaves off the branches, and it's just flowers on bare branches for a little while, and then there's a brief period of time when it's completely deciduous, but not much. It's considered partially deciduous. And yeah, I can get you more information on that if anyone would like it. So that's the two trees that we're going to be talking about. Just as a point of reference, I wanted to share this slide with everyone because it contributes to the overall conversation of vegetation in the plaza. The green circles you see are existing broadleaf trees, not including the palms, that would remain, and they're all evergreens. We did hear some discussion about shade trees and adding more variety of species to the plaza. So as we're looking at the next couple of slides, it's just good to keep in mind that there is some evergreen structure to the plants in the plaza today. And I've included, just for reference, the two in the casa because they're visually connected. So this is the first scheme, and this is essentially what we showed you last time and what all the sort of renderings that you've seen so far reflects. It's a very restrained concept, just with a single species, the Palo Verdes. And that would be, in this concept, really the only new species introduced to the plaza, playing off what's already there. I wanted to share a quote from Post Hazeltine, who we've been reviewing this with, and I'll just read it so I don't mess it up. But they said that many urban spaces of its era, like De La Guerra Plaza, emphasized an overall feeling of openness and the primacy of a built environment, largely unencumbered by vegetation or trees. And they wrote that, talking about the appropriateness of this species. It's got a slender profile, lacy foliage, and they feel like it's visually compatible with the predominant architectural theme of the plaza. So this scheme is very simple, but we do believe that it's appropriate scale for the plaza. Its lightness really does have a transparency to it to appreciate the architecture. And having like it in rows like this, really the rhythm that it creates really does emphasize the strength of the geometry of the plaza. So that's the first scheme. We do realize that there has been some interest in planting that was a bit more varied and a bit more garden-esque. So we haven't ignored that. We've taken that on board and spent some time thinking about it. And here's a second option that you guys can consider. It's similar with a few significant tweaks. So we've introduced the floss silk tree as an accent. You can see there's the scheme is bookended on both ends by the floss silk, and the ones on I'm calling it the north. It's really the northwest, I suppose. But in front of the casa, we've added a pair sort of in the street to really try to visually capture the casa into the space. And then this one also, see where we've omitted a tree in the line, broken the geometry a little bit on the bottom edge there. That's with an eye to the future, some succession planting. One day the big pepper won't be in front of City Hall, and we don't know how long that'll be. It could be another 50, 100 years, and it may not be. So at some point that won't be there. And what we've tried to do is set up sort of succession planting around it that could grow up and frame the steps to City Hall, and then mirror that in front of La Placida on the bottom side. So it's kind of making a bit more of an east-west axis, visual axis across the plaza at that end. Let me see if I have any other notes on that. I think that's it. And that's the last slide I have on planting. So maybe I'll hand it back to Chair Sneddon for some deliberation.
Thank you. I have a question at this point. So the two floss silks that would be in the street, would that preclude vehicles from being able to pass through there?
Good question. Obviously now we haven't drawn any changes to the street itself, but no, we would provide a lane of travel. It still needs to function as a road access for emergency and authorized vehicles. So they would be sort of off to one side of the center line in some sort of wells in the pavement.
Okay. Thank you. So it's sort of on where the current sidewalk is, sort of. Yeah.
Close to that. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I appreciate you adding in the variety very much, actually, and being able to picture that. I know we have had some public comment on the trees blocking the architecture, and I think you commented a bit on that. I like the direction this is going. I'll say that to start. I'm not sure it's all the way there to my eye, but happy to discuss it all the way through. Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question on the succession planting, actually. If you could go back to a discussion on that. I'm a little bit confused what you mean by succession planting, and in the space where the tree is omitted, is that, are you leaving that blank or are you putting something in there? Could you just elaborate on that, please? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, the intent would be to leave this blank and instead of the unbroken row of trees. And the succession planting that I'm alluding to is for the day when this pepper tree is no longer there, what will it look like at this end of the plaza? So if you imagine the big pepper tree eventually senescing, you'll have the entry to City Hall flanked by two trees, and then what the idea is to mirror that on this side of the tree. So sort of frame La Placita building on the other side and have a visual axis across here. So it's the succession planting is basically planning for this tree not being there forever.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I thought that's what you meant, but I just wanted to make sure. And then did the architectural historian comment on the row of trees flanking the plaza that, you know, you've got some real structure to the planting of the trees? So did they make comments on that?
You know, not specifically on that. We spent some time looking over the plans, and the sort of sentiment that I read earlier about the way plazas of this era generally evolved was they were quite sparsely vegetated, and I think fundamentally pushing the vegetation to the edge and leaving the middle open is an idea that they support. but they didn't comment specifically on the row of trees.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. That answers my questions.
Did you have any other input on it, or do you want to wait? We can go a couple rounds on this one.
I just assume I'd like to hear from my fellow committee members on this. Yeah, I just want to study it a little more. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the committee?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Drury.
Michael Drury. Yeah, so I'd like to ask Mr. McKay, are the silk trees, are they vetted for this kind of climate?
Yes, Mr. Drury, they are.
So they would tolerate fog, days of fog and lots of rain,
Yeah.
we hope someday. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there's a number of examples around downtown.
Okay. And I know the Palo Verde trees, they can endure frost and all that because frosty in Tucson, that's where I've seen lots of Palo Verde trees. I guess, may I go to comment, Madam Chair?
Please do. Yes.
Yeah, I like the idea of the variation. I like the idea of those splashes of color. I'm not sold on where they are one way or the other, but I like the idea of mixing the two trees you've chosen. I think they would be very attractive together. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Snedden. I love the color. I think you've picked great species. I kind of like the omission of that Palo Verde tree. Question, Mr. McKay, did you guys consider omitting, say, another Palo Verde, the third from the southwest side to kind of give it balance and open that up a bit? And especially considering if we had objections in blocking historical resources. Just wondering if that was considered.
Well, Commissioner Reed, I guess not. We didn't specifically talk about that tree, but we were trying to create a really pleasant sense of space and experience where that outdoor dining is. So my initial thought about that particular suggestion is it would take a tree away from where we think people are going to want to congregate, and it may be sacrificing some sense of space in that area.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think your landscape plan is fabulous, and how that pairs with lighting and artwork at the bases is great. I'd be curious to see what Ms. Peterson's comments are in terms of those two floss silks by Casa de la Guerra.
Thank you. And Commissioner House. Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you. Yeah.
It helps to turn that on. So I'll start over. I'm not a landscape architect, and I don't even play one on TV, but I have certainly learned a lot from hanging out with landscape architects on the Historic Landmarks Commission and the Architectural Board of Review. As you know, Julio Vena was our second landscape architect, and the first one departed for a job in Orlando, and then Julio had health problems, so we don't have benefit of a landscape architect right now. But I think when this comes to HLC, my feelings about the landscape will be informed by not only the opinion of the newly appointed landscape architect, but also the Phase 2 HSSR. I think we need to hear them weigh in, but I like what I'm seeing, but once again, I'm responding to it just because I like the color, I like the layout, I think it'll be great, but I wonder about the silk floss trees next to the Casa de la Guerra being too obstructive of the view of that. So there's a lot of considerations, but so far I like what I'm seeing.
Thank you. And just to your comment about when it does come to HLC, since that's a part of the full process later, I think here we're each sort of representing our views of what we believe, and then it will go through the full process. So I want to invite you to just look at it through your own lens while it's here, and then it'll go through the HLC lens as it moves through too. And I share your concerns about the silk floss. So I think we'll along Dela Guerra, we'll ask about that. Did you have further comment on?
No, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Longstreet?
I think that the color is stunning. I will now go out and look at the floss silk trees from a new angle. The ones that I recall are pretty tall, and I don't see them as necessarily, I mean, obviously when they go in, they won't be, but I don't see them as blocking as much as, let's say, the Palo Verde, where it has a bigger canopy. So I'm hoping, but I'm thinking of mature trees. So I like it. I could see maybe one less on where the tree is admitted. I could see maybe them spread out a little bit, because of when I think of the outdoor dining, I also think of tables and umbrellas. So, you know, a mix of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the choice of trees and the colors. Thank you.
So do you think spread out, or the third over from the bottom right omitted, as Commissioner Reed suggested? Any preference?
Again, I'm not a landscape architect. To me, if you took one out, you'd maybe spread them a little more evenly. Just having a hole doesn't necessarily appeal to me, but I'm sure Ms. Wiscombe will have better ideas, since that's her bailiwick.
It takes all of us. And I'm also thinking about the flexibility of space, that if there's one less and a little spread out, then as you're thinking of addition of table and chair and umbrellas in some places, or maybe some, yeah, okay. Thank you. Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we started this process, I like the choice of the two trees. Leaf, maybe you could, I just want to make sure the floss silk tree is the thornless variety, right? We have a thornless variety. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, great. Because some of them have pretty heavy thorns on the trunks. I love the structure, the architectural structure of the Palo Verde. I think it's just a gorgeous tree, and I think it would fit really well in the plaza here. I like the color. I was very happy to hear about the seasonal blooms. So we're going to get Palo Verde spring and maybe summer blooms, and the floss silk in the fall, which I think is great. So we have that seasonal interest. And again, I go back to the architectural character of the Palo Verde when it's leafless. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous architectural structure. And so I think that's great. I don't know about the eliminating that one tree, as Commissioner Reed said. It might break it up a little bit, but I also think that the line of trees complements on that side, complements the plaza design. So I'm not sure about that. And these are all trees that are they have a wall that people can sit on. Is that correct? That's what I remember from, yeah, okay.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, so I don't know about that, but I think this will add seasonal interest and complement the plaza design very nicely. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Harmon, or
Thank you.
yes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll just be very brief. I too love the colors. I mean, my initial reaction was just real excitement about that. It's beautiful. And I think I'm with Commissioner Wiscombe. My total layman reaction here. So I'm not even sure how much it's worth, honestly. I love the way it looks to have that line of trees. And it's just, I'm having almost an emotional reaction to how beautiful that could be. So my inclination is to keep those, I guess it's how many, 5? Though I would be interested maybe in seeing what it would look like to have a little bit more open space. I just, it doesn't, imagining it doesn't give me the same sense of place, I guess, as what I would imagine this line of trees looking like. And I agree, if we have the wall for people to sit, it might not, I just wonder how that would look breaking it up like that. So I'm inclined to keep all of them, but very open, and it might just take a rendering for me to see it if that's the direction that the committee wants to go. Thanks.
Excellent.
Madam.
Thank you. And any input on the 2 floss silk along De La Guerra?
Oh, I will leave that to Dr. Peterson.
Okay. Thank you. And then I think I saw Ann Peterson pop up. If you're ready, or there we go. Yes.
Sure.
Anxiously awaiting your input.
Oh my goodness. Well, I do think the tree choices are beautiful. Again, you know, not a horticulturalist. I also appreciate the comments. There are a lot of new trees, and I was a little overwhelmed by how many new trees there are. So I like the idea of exploring maybe removing one of the Palo Verde trees and then spacing the rest of them out a bit. I think that was a good suggestion. I also think as we go along, seeing some kind of elevation rendering of what these trees will look like against the architecture behind them will be really helpful for those who are concerned about the vistas. In terms of the floss silk trees on De La Guerra Street, I really appreciate the intent to provide continuity and bring the casa into the rest of the design. I think the ground surface does that already really well. I'm not sure that the trees are necessary in order to do that. And again, you know, one of our concerns is that view of the building that allows, and the facade of the building that allows you to imagine what it would have looked like when it was built and when the De La Guerra family was living there. And I worry that the trees are going to interrupt those views of the architecture and you know, pull it a little bit too much into this sort of 1920s revival vision of the plaza that you know is present more on the other side with the 1920s architecture. So I think it's okay in that sense for the casa to be a little different and to not have those trees. Also, I received some feedback from our archaeologist, Michael Imwali, this morning, and it doesn't, and his concern is shade. So we have 2 existing trees in the courtyard. We definitely don't want to introduce any more shade onto the adobe that can lead to moisture problems with the adobe. And I'm not sure if these locations would impact it, but just maybe another reason to think about removing those 2 from the design. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I'm wondering if we could flip quickly to the initial slide where we look at the current state of De La Guerra Plaza. I know it's a ways back, sorry. I just want to point out all of the palm trees that are not staying, and it's almost, I mean, all the way back to the introduction slide, the very first slide, this one. And so when we have these, so the new plantings would basically be where the cars are. Is that correct, or a little bit further in towards the center?
They would be closer to like the exact center of the loop road, a little bit further out than where the cars are, because there would be a sort of a pedestrian width walkway between the trees and the buildings.
And then aside from the central palm that's staying near the splash pad, all these other palm trees and that the hedging would be gone. So it's sort of a like for like, I mean, it's a more beautiful replacement like for like, but it isn't an entirely new introduction of trees. It's just sort of spaced differently. And
yeah, and it would be an interesting exercise to just do a tally to see if there was a net gain or loss. I suspect we may actually not be adding any more trees at all when you count all the palm trees.
mm-hmm. And I'll just say for myself a comment that I've made before, and I can hear that we're leaning towards the linear trees. And I may be alone in this, but I like the haphazard trees. I like the sort of whimsy of it. And we have such hard lines of the other design element lines of the newly designed plaza, but we're losing the softness of the grass. We're losing some of that free form whimsy of the trees. And I mean, they really are sort of haphazard locations currently, but I like that. I like the variability of that. And I think that's very Santa Barbara. It's very Alice Keck Park. It's very, like when you walk around town, things aren't all linear in that way. It's sort of surprising. But I'll just continue to make that comment that I like them staggered a little more, but I can see that's maybe not the direction that we're taking. And I would say too that I would eliminate the 2 floss silks along De La Guerra for that same reason. And I think that might be less overwhelming with the trees also. We did not hear from Commissioner Perry, I believe, if you wanted to comment.
It just got more complicated. I loved your comments. And I do like the whimsical look that we have in Santa Barbara. I also wanted to hear Dr. Peterson's comments and would support her desire to keep the Casa de la Guerra as a focal point as opposed to being obstructed by trees. I would also, if we looked at this in a more whimsical fashion, I don't know that we would need to reduce the number of trees, but I do think the southwest side is a little bit too heavily planted and would like to see an omission of 1, maybe 2 of those Palo Verde's trees.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure that we're closer or further from where we were, but I think it sounds like we are all appreciating the particular trees that are selected and the color and the seasonal variability. There's some discussion about maybe fewer trees on that south end, maybe not, maybe spaced, some discussion there. It sounds like elimination of the 2 floss silk along De La Guerra. And I think that was the main summary that I got from that. I'm not sure if that gives you the direction that you need or not.
Madam Chair, I feel comfortable with that direction. I think, as we noted in the beginning, this design is not done. Clearly, there are going to be a lot of voices that are going to speak into this, as Commissioner Haas alluded to at HLC, with another landscape architect reviewing it. But I think it does provide us with clear direction, specifically around the Casa de la Guerra trees, and then we'll evaluate the spacing along the dining area that people noted. So I'll turn it back to Leif.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks all for those comments. That was very helpful. We're going to move on to the lighting. Anne Kale is with us again today, and she gave quite a thorough presentation last time, and much of which seemed fairly easily supported by the committee. But she wants to go over briefly those things and then spend a little time on the other concepts that she introduced last time on some sort of above and beyond type of lighting concepts. So Anne, I'm going to hand it over to you and just let me know when you want the slides advanced.
All right. Okay, go ahead. So this is going to be a condensed version of what you saw at our last meeting. And just to touch on the major points, so we have time to zoom in on the more fine-tuned points. Here's we're showing the existing lighting with the proposed lighting, just so that you have a sense of where everything we're proposing is going. The purple dots are where the existing light poles are. The existing light pole is the one that you see to the left. It's the standard downtown Santa Barbara light pole. And our proposal is to push the light poles closer to the buildings, opening up the plaza more. And we're proposing that we use a combination of 2-head and 3-head trees. Not trees, sorry, poles. The 3-headed fixtures would be at the left and the right. And then the 2-headed poles would be in the center. And we've run preliminary light fixture calculations, and we anticipate that this will triple the light level that we have in the plaza right now. It just makes it a little bit more vibrant. It definitely gives you a stronger sense of security safety. Next slide. So we also want to replace existing much smaller pedestrian style poles over on the right-hand side that are in front of the news press. And just along the planter there, just helps your walkway, towards the parking lot at the top. And then with the new arcade, introducing a simple pendant mounted fixture that lights up the ceiling and does a nice job just lighting up the architecture, making it a bit of a beacon within the plaza. Next. And then very important to the plaza at night, lighting up some of the landscape. So on the left-hand side, you can see that we're recommending that we moonlight the pepper tree. Again, moonlights are fixtures that you mount high in the tree, and you try and catch as much of the foliage of the tree as possible. The lights are aimed down towards the plaza, and what you get is this fabulous dappled lighting effect that you see in the image to the left. And then uplighting the some of the palm trees that we have in the placita. It's possible we could uplight the existing, the old historic palm tree, but as you can see, we're not showing that here. I think it can be lit. We can leave it dark either way. And we also want to light up some of the lower foliage in the placita. There you see an image up to the upper right. And what's very pretty is when we take the floodlight, stake-mounted floodlight, it's at the ground. We aim it horizontally towards the plants, and then you get this great pattern effect against the white stucco, and that also contributes more light into the placita. And we also want this to be a really vibrant place at night, helping to draw people in from State Street and leading them into the newly revitalized plaza. Next slide. And then, of course, lighting the water jets, which is a great deal of fun. Next slide. Lighting the planter walls around the trees, and also introducing lighting underneath the curved bench at the end. And what this does is that when, imagine yourself standing in front of De la Guerra, the Casa de la Guerra, and looking down this very beautiful plaza, and it just helps to end that view. It's a very pretty lighting effect. Also, you'll see here that we've added some wall sconces on the restroom. And then as a possibility, this is another art opportunity. introducing gobo patterns onto the some of the facade, one facade, City Hall, and then also onto the Placita and onto De La Guerra Street. Again, as a way of encouraging people to go explore the plaza at night. And the way that we would be mounting these is that on the lower left, you can see how we would light up the upper level of City Hall by simply mounting a small gobo fixture on the pole itself. And then for the two streets, the Placita and the De La Guerra street, we would mount it very high up into the palm tree. We like to locate our fixtures right under the crown of the palm. We get a much better angle the higher we go, but also the fixture has a much better chance of disappearing visually when you're looking up at it against all of the fronds of the palm tree. And here you can see we did this as a mock-up. The upper left is a mock-up that we did on the Hotel Californian. This is a mock-up we actually did in coordination with the HLC. The comment was, you know, pretty, probably wants to be more subdued. This is perhaps a little loud for De La Guerra Plaza. But again, I think that this is an artist's, this should be an artist's vision of what this is. There is an upper window, very beautiful upper window on this facade. And actually, I think it would incorporate quite nicely with any kind of projection. And then on the lower right is where you can see a projection. Here, this is sort of a scrambled pattern. It can be more of a mosaic pattern. Again, it can have color, not color. Again, artist vision that would be working closely with you. And then the last slide, no, second to last slide. So again, this is just to give you a visual on what we have now, which is on the left-hand side, the existing illumination, and then on the right, the proposed illumination. You can see that the plaza really is coming to life at night to encourage participants, visitors, families, it's a nice place to spend an evening. And then the next slide. Again, a possible light art opportunity. You've seen, you can easily imagine an art piece that doesn't have lighting incorporated into it. It may be lit at night, but just to sort of broaden the conversation, the possibility of considering a piece of art that does have light into it. Again, as a way of entering the plaza at night. And that's our presentation.
So back to you, Chair Snedden, and you can we can talk about the lighting.
Thank you. There is much to discuss here, I think. We have, going back, we have the 2- and 3-headed lighting, the arcade pendants, moonlighting the pepper tree, uplighting the palms, landscape planting lighting, lighting the water jets, and then bench lighting, projection lighting, both facade lighting and ground lighting, and then the art lighting. So there's, I have to just say before we start the discussion, these are beautiful. The slides are so beautiful. Once you see things illuminated like that, it really does bring it to life. It's really nice to see the way that's presented. Mr. Hess, did you have a comment, or you're here? Yes.
If I may, Madam Chair, and Ann did a great job. I want to just clarify a couple of things. There's very clearly going to be a safety component to this, that you know, the double-headed and the triple-headed fixtures add that. The arcade lighting adds that. The other pendants light that add that. I think these are concepts that we need to talk about, whether you guys are comfortable with them being a part of this design as it goes forward. Again, this is one of those things that there are going to be multiple voices after this committee discusses this that will help direct this. But it's really about, do you like this as a concept? So just wanted to add that as part of the guiding of the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. So all of it as a concept, or are you looking for comments on, are there elements of it? I'll say for myself, there are elements of it I'm not quite sure about, that might be a little bit too modern. So I don't know if that's the type of feedback, but all of the added lighting for safety and for inviting into the plaza, the arcade pendant, the moonlighting, the pepper tree, I love. The uplighting the palms, landscape planting, lighting the water jets. But then when we start to get into bench lighting and projection lighting, I think there are questions of what's being projected, and I can see a lot of opportunities for City Hall, you know, events or different things projecting. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure about that part myself. And then for the art lighting, and maybe that's something, I'm just opening it up, so anything anybody wants to comment on. The image that's in the slide, it shows the art lighting over a grassy area. And I think in the daytime, without that grass, it becomes a little bit hardscape. It's the one that bottom left in the art lighting in the day looks a little hard to me, but the one above it is also lighting trees and grass, and it has a different feel. And then I think just to that, I really love this concept, except for that there was a public commenter made, I think last time, about if it already exists someplace else, then it's not as special to Santa Barbara. So it's sort of like, oh, Santa Barbara has one of those art light things that someplace else has. And I think there's a little bit of, even if we change the words to reflect Santa Barbara, I don't know, there's something a little bit not as unique about that to me, but I do like that if there's an art piece there, it being illuminated. So I guess those are my comments. I think the lighting really makes the plaza. I think what you've done there with illuminating, and especially in the arcade and the added light, and it will definitely bring more activity there. And I'll stop there. Commissioner Longstreet.
What strikes me is I don't want De La Guerra Plaza to look like Paseo Nuevo. That's the feeling I get from the lighting, this too much lighting. I want it safe and appropriately lit. I like the uplighting of trees and things like that. But once we get into projections and all of that, it just starts to feel to me like Paseo Nuevo. And so that's my thought. I don't know a lot about lighting, but I think less is better than more, if that helps.
Thank you. And Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, Chair Sneddon. So I would anticipate, I think this is fabulous. Ms. Kale, you did an outstanding job. It's just exciting. And I think that's important. And I would anticipate there being, through this process, quite a few objections to it. In my opinion, lighting is, there's very little permanency to some of these suggestions, other than, you know, the traditional fixtures themselves, which I don't anticipate there being many objections to. Lights can be turned off. I think for me, one of our city's top priorities right now is incentivizing housing in our downtown core. I think that naturally that's going to be a younger demographic if and when we get that housing. That's to be determined. I think that having some of these more creative light installations installed gives us options. And I think we need to really appeal, while absolutely being sensitive to Commissioner Longstreet's comments. I don't want this to be Paseo Nuevo, but there's a balance. And so I would I would hope and caution us not to just throw out everything that seems modern or contemporary, but to give it a fighting chance. And with it installed, you know, we're not married to just one type of art or projection. There's so much flexibility with that type of technology. So I just hope we could put ourselves in a position to explore it. Again, I love the lighting, and I do support lighting all artwork. I think that's very important wherever we have that art, including the art around the planter beds. And I wouldn't be opposed to the accent lighting on the benches either. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner House.
I remembered to turn on my mic.
Nicely done.
I have nothing but the highest regard for Ann Kale. She's an incredible lighting designer, and I'm always look forward to seeing what solutions she comes up with. And one of the principles of lighting design is to define a space by illuminating the perimeter of it. And she's done an incredible job of that. You know, she could have opted for ground mounted uplights, which would have been inappropriate, but I think she's really accomplished a difficult task here. So I support all the lighting that's proposed. I think some would be in the category of special event lighting, and it should be very much stipulated that, you know, when it's appropriate, which would be the projected light, and the uplighting of the fountains. The only thing I really object to is the bench lighting. I think that's just a very contemporary approach. Rope lighting or, you know, whatever LED strip is just not something that goes back very far. And so, you know, that troubles me. But I think that it's just going to create an incredibly beautiful environment at night. And I think being a public plaza, it's part of its job is to draw people into it, and lighting certainly accomplishes that at night. So I think it's very beautiful and wonderful.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, my compliments to Ms. Kale. I think you've done a great job, and you've given us a lot to think about here. I wrote down, I love the triple and double posts. I think they bring a kind of the design of them kind of brings a history here that's important, and really it's very nice. I love the arcade and the pole lights at the News Press building. I certainly love the idea of moonlighting the pepper and uplighting the palms in the Placida, and lighting the water jets. I think that's very important. I think that's just going to be a very exciting and fun thing to do. Lighting the planters and bench lights, I support doing that. We want to use this at night, and I think it just makes the space more inviting. And hopefully there can be a solution to that Historic Landmarks Commission agrees with. The wall sconces on the restroom, great. The projection lighting, I love it at the Placida and De La Guerra Street on the streets themselves. And part of the reason why is it draws people into the space at night. But it also, I go back to a comment that Commissioner Reed made quite a few meetings ago about the Placida when he was young being a scary place to go. So I think this really, really helps. And I think it's just going to enliven the entry from there. I'm not so convinced about the lighting on City Hall, but I appreciate the comments that, and I think it was Commissioner House that just made it, that, you know, maybe that could be a special event lighting. That might work. But I wasn't as thrilled about that. But I am a little bit more warmed up about it with the fact that it might be a special event lighting. And the art light, as it was shown, I'm struggling with that. I definitely want to see that art feature lit up, definitely, but I'm not to the point of saying that it should be a light feature as the art piece. I think Kirsten, you made the comment about, well, we had grass there. I looked at that lighting piece that Ms. Kale showed, and it was projected onto grass, and it was had a good texture to it. And I just feel that yeah, that's it on the at the upper left there. I feel that we need to explore what goes in that space more and then celebrate it with lighting when we get to that point. And if it turns out to be an art light, then that's fine. But at this point, I'm kind of lukewarm on actually making it a lighting feature. I think it should just be this point of feature that needs to be lit. And those are my comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And have we heard from Councilmember Harmon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm just going to echo what many of our colleagues have said. First, of course, Ms. Kale, I absolutely love what you've done. I mean, it's really so exciting. So I have to add my voice to the chorus on that. As Ms. Wiscombe said, I particularly loved the lights in the splash pad. I can imagine my daughter, you know, following them around, and it just, what we're talking about, bringing families into this space. I can see us having an evening walk and playing there, and it's just going to be awesome. So I'm very, very supportive of that and grateful for the idea. I think it's brilliant. And as Commissioner Reed said, I really like the idea of us giving ourselves the flexibility to bring this space, to evolve in this space as our downtown needs evolve. I agree. I really like the projected lighting on those two pathways. I think there's potential for projection on City Hall. I similarly had an initial reaction of, oh, maybe that's too much, but I think, you know, it does give us a lot of flexibility to put it in. And I think to the extent that we can give ourselves that space to evolve as necessary, I think we should go for it. And I think there's a lot of potential, certainly for special events, but maybe even in other ways. And I want to just give ourselves that room. And then there was one other thing. Oh, I'm not so inclined toward bench lighting, I have to say. But I've been convinced by some of the other arguments that it really will allow for evening use. So I'm open to it. Yeah, I just would want to make sure that this is such a technical word here, but I would hope it looks classy. I've sometimes seen bench lighting that doesn't really work. It's a little tacky. So that's my only, and of course, Ms. Kale, I know everything you do is beautiful. So that's just my only concern about that. But otherwise, really, really exciting, and my gratitude. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmon. Can I ask you, Ms. Kale, for the bench lighting, is there another way to light sort of that space around the benches that might not be bench, right under the bench lighting? Like, yeah, I don't know, like maybe the planters or different, or maybe something to think about if there might be a different way.
Well, that area does have illumination in it just from the poles. So we will not be underlit if we take away the bench lighting. There's always more than one way of lighting something. However, the trees will be lit from the poles. They'll look great. The poles are going to be mingled right in there with the tree. And I think one of the things that's good to remember is that the bench is lined, at least at this point, with beautiful, colorful tiles. And the bench lighting is really there to highlight that. The focus is on that, not that we have the modern stroke of having a light under a bench. I think that's important. And then as far as the bench lighting, to the right of the water jets, one of the things to visualize, because it can be a little challenging to visualize lighting, is that it really is in response to the casa. The casa at night has this beautiful, it's really very well, the concept is really very well conceived. And it's just uplighting the underside of the roof structure of the patio that surrounds the casa. And so it's an anchor to this entire plaza. And just not to compete with it, but just to help comment on it. Having that bench lighting, again, lighting that beautiful tile at the far end. There's just something very beautiful and pleasant about anchoring the two ends of the plaza.
Thank you. Your comment on that.
Madam Chair, I would just add quickly, when Ms. Kale puts it in the context of lighting that tile, all of a sudden I'm really excited about it. So I just want to say I appreciate that framing. That does help me envision it. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. And I think too, if it's a softer lighting or different things, and I just, yeah, seeing how things are lit, I have such high confidence in how Ms. Kale is choosing these options. Dr. Peterson, yes.
Just real briefly, I support my colleagues who've suggested moving this concept design forward as is, and it will get developed and refined. But I like all of the ideas a lot. I think they have a lot of potential. And I think Commissioner Reed's point is well taken, that we won't always see every single lighting concept activated like we see in the rendering, that some of them can be deployed for special uses. And I think that's really fun, and that we want to keep the potential to have various techniques for different types of environments, times of the year, and different events.
Thank you. And I don't believe we heard from Commissioner Perry or Mr. Drury yet.
I think you like last.
Oh, okay. So Commissioner Drury.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Ms. Kale and I go way back. And you did, as I recall, you did the program for La Entrada, and we went around and around. I like all the ideas. I don't like the idea of projecting patterns on City Hall. I think the architecture can stand on its own. And I have a question. Is the projection, it was on a lawn, is that a pattern lighting on a downward pattern lighting on that? In the photograph, it was not tile, but it was a lawn, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is lawn. If you look at this particular artist, Jim Sanborn's work, you'll see other places where it is on a textured, paved, hard surface. And of course, it doesn't have to be this artist. It's just a concept.
Yeah. So my idea is that it would be on the tile laid down in the plaza, and on that tile there'll be art nodes. I believe there's some sort of my idea was that there'd be these little historic plaques throughout the plaza. So I think that kind of lighting would get in the way of at night of looking at those things. So I like the ideas of, except for those two projections, the downward projection on the plaza tile and the projection on the City Hall. Otherwise, I think it has the potential of being a home run, and it will, of course, get massaged by the Landmarks Commission. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Commissioner Perry.
I had done a short stint with County Parks some years back, and I remember the director of that telling us the way they measure the success of a safe park environment is by the number of women and children you see utilizing it. I see this very family friendly. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to the community. I wish we had a representative from the news press present to give us their feedback onto the impact of this, as I see the lighting really accentuating that building as well. So it's beautiful. We look forward to seeing it in action.
Thank you. And thank you for that comment. We have reached out to members of the news press, and they're invited for comment and input. So they will definitely be part of the continued conversation. So I'll just summarize there. What I'm hearing is a unanimous excitement, and really so beautiful. And I think it really makes the plaza come to life, and in the evening, and really accentuates the beauty of the plaza. And I think it sounds to me like we have just the whole plan, move it forward with the lighting. I don't see any reason to put limitations here at this point. And when we think about the vitalities, one of the main vitalities was flexibility to appreciate the space and use the space. And this, with the projection lighting in particular, that it can be on or off or changed or highlighting different things, I think, or not on at all. It really speaks to that flexibility and honoring the historic heart of the city. So when we keep filtering it back through those vitalities, this hits all the marks on that. And I think you heard from all of us how much we appreciate these designs and how beautiful they are. So thank you. I think you have the direction you need there. Yeah. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
If
Mr.
I could just say one thing really quickly.
Yeah.
Architectural lighting is a team sport. I have to say that thank you for all of your wonderful comments. I just really need to acknowledge that many of these ideas are from RRM, and they just have some really great ideas. We got to hold the paintbrush.
Thank you. And then Mr. Drury, did you have?
Yeah, I have a sort of a final comment. The combination of the Palo Verde and floss silk trees with the lighting is going to create extraordinarily beautiful shadows on the facades of the buildings surrounding the plaza. And I'm really looking forward. I mean, it'll be in the future a bit because these things have to grow, but I think it's going to be a really wonderful, welcoming space. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Hess, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Anne. Home run, excellent job. If I may, Madam Chair, quick question. It is about 10 after 10 right now. The plan is to continue with overall discussion. And if everyone is comfortable, we would then, obviously we still need to hear public comment. And then if everyone's comfortable moving this forward, we have to create a recommendation. Can I suggest a 5-minute recess for just so that everyone's geared up and ready for the last maybe 40, 50 minutes?
Yes, that's an excellent idea. Maybe we can start lining up the public speakers with a public comment. Would that be a good time for that? And then, okay. So we'll take a 5-minute recess and come back at 10:15.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And when there is public comment, if anyone with cameras would like to have your cameras on, so the public is talking to all of us. Thank you, Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Chair Sneddon, we have 3 folks that would like to make a public comment as of now. Hands are still being raised.
Okay.
So we'll go to our first one. Let's see, Mary Louise Days. You have 2 minutes to speak. I will unmute you. Mary Louise Days, you are self-muted. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This has been a very interesting presentation. The tree plans, I agree with Mr. Reed and subsequent speakers about desire to loosen up the number of trees in the southwesterly portion. Please, because we must keep in mind photographic opportunities for the special architecture surrounding the plaza and the plaza itself. That, of course, includes not blocking portions of the Casa de la Guerra with new trees. The scalloped wall, I call it, on the southwesterly portion is historic. It was part of the 1923 transformation of the plaza, the construction of the new city hall, and the old city hall was still in the center at that point. Ms. Chase was very proud of that scalloped wall. She dated it as 1923. It's not something to be obscured and covered up. I also did not hear latest information about the tall historic palm tree. It would be very dangerous to move it, but what's the latest information on that? And also the proposed location for the California State Historic Landmark plaque that is near De La Guerra Street. The lighting proposals are interesting, and I agree with the comments made about not allowing it to get too modern and inappropriate for the period. But thank you very much for your discussions.
Thank you, Ms. Days. And could we have Mr. Hess or Mr. McKay comment on the historic palm? It does seem like it is in the plans now at the splash pad, not moved. And then also, I believe later we're talking about placement of the plaques, but if you could end the scalloped wall, if there could be comment on those at this point.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'll speak briefly. Leaf, you can add to anything that I miss. Leaf has had discussions with Post Hazeltine about the tree. Nothing has been decided. We think that if there is some, I guess you could call it danger in affecting the life of the tree because it's currently in grass and has been in grass since its inception. Relocating it away from a hardscape space would be better for the tree. We're proposing, if it is going to be relocated, to put it in front of City Hall. in the grassy area there. We think it would be more successful there and have a longer life, but it's a historic tree. So that has not been decided. It's still in discussion. As for the scalloped wall, our intent is to, of course, keep it. We're not trying to obscure it. We're trying to, in fact, open it up. So hopefully it will remain and continue to be looked upon fondly.
Thank you. Thank you. Next public comment.
Great, thank you. We have Natalia Giovanni. You can unmute yourself and you have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Sneddon and committee members. This project that sits here before you today seriously needs to be reconsidered, as I believe it is still too sterile and too contemporary for that historic district. Adding all that cement, a splash pad, and an arcade looks more like an amusement park and really has no place in De La Guerra Plaza. What this committee fails miserably to see and consider is that there have been many people over the years who have worked tirelessly in preserving this historic district, and it would be a slap in their faces if this design was approved. Has this committee even researched other city designs? For example, the city of Pasadena has a beautiful design, and I would highly recommend viewing that in order to get some ideas for the De La Guerra Plaza. Furthermore, there still lacks a demand and environmental study, and that should definitely be completed and analyzed before moving forward. So I would urge all of you today to please press the pause button. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Mr. Hess, could you comment on when environmental study in the city process would happen?
So the Madam Chair, the next steps, as we outlined, would be a PRT, the pre-application review team, getting their feedback. HLC would give their concept feedback. At that point, we'll still need to go through the entire DART submittal, and at that point, that's when those types of studies would need to be complete. So we're again, we're at the beginning of this. This is a concept. It's ready for prime time, but it's also just that. It's a concept.
Thank you. And if we could have the next public speaker.
Okay, our next speaker is Barry Remus. You are self-muted.
Well, thanks, Chair Sneddon and committee members. It's Barry Remus, and I, to strike a little bit of contrast, I don't suppose maybe we can't bring up the slide for illustration of the tree plantings with the Palo Verde and the silk floss, but to throw out a consideration, agreed on not obstructing the historic casa, but to help further frame the space in the new proposed plaza, to take those silk flosses on the left side and shift them over so that they are perhaps then replacing the two Palo Verdes that would have been on that south side, so that you then you do achieve more of a symmetric, if you will, framing of the space, but still add that color. Just something to consider. Lighting, again, personally, I think the concept is fantastic. I personally really do actually favor the underside lighting in, especially the planters, the round planters for the trees, and perhaps the seating as well. More so, not just for the aesthetics, but I do feel that they do bring an element of safety in addition, and to accentuate that tile work on the ground really will add a nice allure. And I do feel that, not being a lighting expert, that that could probably be achieved without necessarily the use of strip LEDs, and maybe find another way. Lighting underneath the water jets also is fantastic. I would recommend, and this is probably already planned for, that lighting be capable of being multicolors, just for the seasonal impact of it, and accentuation. Perhaps most of the time be white, but for special events or holidays or special plans that they could be changing colors. And putting my Coast hat on and SB Bike hat, maybe out of scope for this meeting, but also really looking forward to seeing some type of bicycle parking planned into the schematic of the new plaza. Thank you very much. Happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Remis. And can we have the next public speaker?
Yes. Next speaker is Ohan Adakelian. You are self-muted. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, my name is Ohan Arkelian. I'm a Santa Barbara native. I have 3 comments about this very important revitalization project. First, I'm in support of Ms. Kale's conceptual lighting design. I think it's clear that Ms. Kale is a world-class architectural lighting designer in her respect and thoughtfulness of the surrounding areas in terms of the lighting package. Second, I believe there should be more emphasis on the Spanish colonial architecture. I understand that it's a bit, we're in the conceptual process, but I believe there should be emphasis around that. And third, I'm a representative of the Armenian community of Santa Barbara. We have records that I'm a 4th generation Armenian in Santa Barbara, and we have a historic fountain between the City Hall building and the historic pepper tree. It's recently been revitalized earlier this year through Public Works, and there's a fountain and a plaque involved. And I am requesting, if there's a request to change its location to be a major focal point in this plaza, either in the center or in a major area where people can see it more prominently. I'm very thankful for Brad Hess and his efficiency in getting the community involved. And I know it's early in the process, and we're happy. Our community is happy to provide more public comments as this process goes on for the fountain. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I know Mr. Hess has been in conversation, and I just want the committee to know that we take honoring the Armenian histories seriously, and that plaque will be definitely honored, and we'll work those details out, placement of different landmarks throughout the plaza. Thank you for calling in.
Chair Snedden?
Yes.
What was the name of the last commenter?
Could we have that back, Ohan Atakaria? But perhaps the clerk could tell us the name back.
Yes, it's Ohan Adakelian, Arakelian.
Thank you.
Yes, and very important moving forward. Yes.
Great. And Chair Snedden, I think that concludes public comment. I don't see any more hands. Oh, sorry, one more hand just went up. Let's see, Betsy Kramer. I unmuted you. Betsy Kramer, can you hear us? Oh. Okay, she lowered her hand, so.
Oh.
I don't see any more hands raised at this time.
Okay. Thank you. So now it's back to the committee. I believe we will move through first if we feel that we're ready to make a recommendation. It does seem to me like we're coming to consensus on most everything. But I think first maybe thoughts on whether we're ready for that or not, and then moving through the process of coming up with our recommendations if we feel that we're there. Does anybody want to comment at this point on our readiness? Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I believe we're ready. I think this committee has, I think actually it would be good for Mr. Hess to address this too, but I think this committee has done an excellent job of building consensus on concept, and I emphasize the word concept. And we've covered all the discussion points today, which were the remaining ones from our meeting of last time. And I think we're ready to move it on for a review by City Council and then through the process. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go in order across the screen here. Commissioner Howes, do you feel we're ready to start working on our recommendation?
I certainly do. I think there will always be differences around the edges, but I think major issues, the kiosk, we've kind of made a conclusion on, the lighting, the landscaping. I think we're generally all in agreement with the direction this has been moving. So I don't see any reason to spend a lot more time focusing on any parts of it. I think the overall concept is worth passing on to City Council and then on to a formal review process.
Thank you. Commissioner Longstreet?
I agree, and I would attribute much of that to staff and our consultants' work. And I appreciate that they've gotten us to this point with their outreach. I feel like the community has been involved and all the stakeholders. So thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Reed?
Yes, Chair Sneddon, I would recommend we move this forward. I think it's a timeless concept brought forward by, yes, both staff and the design teams. It's something for our city to be really proud of and anticipating an incredible result. It's going to be a great outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Perry?
I would agree that it's ready to be moved on. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Peterson?
I agree as well. It's ready to move forward. We've had some wonderful discussions, and I'm so impressed with the consensus that we're achieving on the committee, and I'm excited to see it move forward.
And then Councilmember Harmon?
Thanks, absolutely.
Okay. And then if Commissioner Drury, if you also feel ready.
I'd better be ready, and I agree with everybody.
Okay. Well, then I think at this point, I'm just, I really think having all of the discussion that we've had and extra meetings, that it's really has paid off in coming to this point. And Mr. Hess, if you'd like to lead us through crafting our recommendation from this committee, that will move on to council.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Advisory Committee. Again, I'm impressed with how well you have worked together. You've listened to each other, and this is an exciting next step. So this is an example. You all, through your boards and commissions, have created these types of statements and recommendations. A word of thought is we're going to be presenting this recommendation to City Council. We're going to be showing them the concept plan, not necessarily to get feedback or to get approval from them, because that's not the place, but it's really just to tell them where we are, because it was from City Council from which this advisory committee was created. So the stronger the recommendation in terms of language, really the more confidence that everyone has in it. So we want it to be a very positive and with favorable comments. This example is, again, very straightforward. Provide the council the following favorable comments on the conceptual design of De La Guerra Plaza Revitalization Project, this, and this. Second, recommend to the council the continuation of this subcommittee for the purposes of, and then we need to fill in those blanks as well with respect to additional meetings that we might have in the future. One of them for sure is artwork. As noted today in the comments on water fountains, trash enclosure or trash receptacles, bike racks, all of those items will certainly need to be dealt with, whether it's an advisory committee meeting or whether that's handled by staff and HLC is up for discussion. But just know that the filling out of this design will continue, and we want the advisory committee to be involved in those issues that we really feel we need to be involved in. So if anyone has a recommendation just on starting with point number 1 as to how you'd like to craft that language, let's start. We have on the next slide, Leaf is prepared to be our scribe by typing in what we would have as suggested language. So if anyone has that suggestion, go for it.
And for this portion, let's just popcorn. When you have ideas, go ahead and put your camera on, or if you're on the line, speak up. And I see Vice Chair Wiscombe will go first, and we want this to be collaborative and speak freely when it comes to you. I will say that I would like in the recommendation, and I'm sure it will be clear, the vision statement, really the vitalities as part of what the recommendations are. And Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's exactly what I was going to say. I think we should keep this simple. It's a concept. And I think if we include our purpose statement, De La Guerra Plaza celebrates and honors the historic heart of our city and provides the flexibility to serve our community's diverse social, cultural, historic, economic, and environmental vitality. And maybe change that purpose statement to say,
if you could pause for just a moment. Could we have the live slide up so that as Vice Chair Wiscombe is making suggestions that we're putting it in there?
Okay. So I would just say that we recommend the concept plan be forwarded to City Council as it meets our purpose statement, and we believe the subcommittee believes it meets our purpose statement and believes it meets the 5 vitalities, and keep it very simple for their review, for City Council's review.
Thank you. I like that.
I like that too, and you can see why I asked Leaf to be the scribe and not trying to do it myself. So I know how hard that's going to be.
I'm currently regretting offering to do that.
I have a thought that you're copying and pasting and trying to do this all at once. So,
well, I'll just pop that in for reference for now, if that's helpful. But if you could, Vice Chair Wiscombe, if you could sort of repeat that at my rate, that would be great.
Are we a subcommittee? We're a subcommittee, right? We're not a committee. Are we a subcommittee? I don't remember.
We are a committee. We're an advisory committee.
Okay. The committee recommends that the concept plan be forwarded to City Council for review, with comment that we believe it meets our purpose statement as follows, and then do the purpose statement, and we believe it meets the 5 vitalities that were implemented at the beginning of the process.
So back up a little. You got submitted to City Council.
Oh, okay. Is he? Do you want me to do it again?
Yeah, just so I can follow along. See, I'm typing as you're writing on number 2 there.
Oh, okay. I see it now. Okay. The committee recommends that the concept plan be forwarded to City Council with comments comment from the committee that we believe it meets our purpose statement. I'm kind of doing this on the fly, so and then colon and give our purpose statement in probably italicized. There it is. Okay. And further, we believe it meets the 5 vitalities.
Hold on.
Formulated by the committee that are social, cultural, historical, economic, and environmental. Something like that. That's not the greatest wordsmithing, and I can see Commissioner Reed's on here.
So I think the "and further" is not italicized, but then the social, cultural,
Right.
historic, economic, environmental is italicized.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yes.
comma and.
Exactly.
We'll go the Oxford comma there.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Drury, after Commissioner Reed, you'll be
sorry.
right after. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Chair Snedden, I think this is great. I think we don't need to overcomplicate anything. The plan itself will be seen by council. It speaks for itself with vibrancy. And this was our objective, and we met these are our findings. We did it. So as far as the specific wording, I mean, I think this accomplishes what we need. So I'm happy with it. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Maybe we change the word comment to with findings from the committee that it meets.
Yes.
I think that's more appropriate wording, with findings, if everyone would agree with that, with findings from the committee that it meets our purpose statement.
Instead of "we believe." Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then in number 2, and further, we find it meets the 5 vitalities.
Yeah, and there's something about the wording of those 5 vitalities is not quite right, because they're social, cultural, and environmental vitalities, or?
Well, or that it meets the 5 social, cultural, historic, economic, and environmental vitalities formulated by the committee.
Yes, Mr. Drury. Yes, yes.
I think all you need to take out is the "that are." Yeah. Find it meets the 5 formula. Yeah, but take out "that are," and then colon, and then the 5 vitalities.
So does it look? Find it meets.
Well, if we're going to do 5, then we have to write 5. I guess we got them all. Period. So then just a period.
Yeah. How does number 2 look to you right now? Can you see it?
That's right. And then drink alike, because the findings was what I was going to suggest. And so I think it's wonderful. And I hope we can do with number 3 that we do recommend the continuation of the subcommittee for further meetings. I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. And maybe as needed, and instead of limiting what they are. I mean, we know so far we have art meeting, and then there will be placement.
Right. Yeah.
Different items. Mr. Hess, did you want to comment on that?
I do. I just want to, Madam Chair, just real quick on point number 3 is, I think it would be better for us if it's possible to define what we want to meet on in the future. And the reason is that we're going to be running a parallel path with this plan because HLC as the governing board will be hearing this concept in the early part of next year. And what we don't want to have happen is it be in conflict with the advisory committee. So I think we want to be specific and not leave it so open-ended so that council really understands why we're going to have future meetings. And I mean, it's up to us as far as how many and what we want to talk about, but I think it would be helpful to be clear on that.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind as we move through. And so we'll have Vice Chair Wiscombe, Commissioner Reed, and then Commissioner Longstreet.
Madam Chair, could I get on that list too? Thank you.
Yes.
It's Megan.
Yes, Councilmember Harmon.
So what I'm hearing from Mr. Hess, if he wants to be specific, and I think it's a good idea to be specific. Continuation of this committee for the purpose of, he talked about artwork and we've talked about site furnishings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's anything else, but we should have a general statement in there about if something else comes up. And I'm not quite sure how to word that, but
well, something also is something about cultural considerations. I mean, we still have meetings and recommendations.
Cultural celebration.
Celebrate. Well, yes.
Cultural.
It's something along those lines as we make sure that we're after there have been meetings with Chumash representatives and after we've met with the Armenian community, that how those are actually going to be integrated, I think would be a whole reason to have a meeting and have discussion and have representatives to come and talk with us. So
would it be
cultural
stakeholders?
Considerations? Yeah, cultural.
For the purposes of cultural considerations, art, site furnishings, and I don't know, Mr. Hess, is there something else that we should, and I'm thinking other.
Let's move through some other comments and it might take shape from that as well. Yeah, Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, Chair Snen, just my only comment on number 2. Would it be appropriate to just remove the word 5? I mean, there's obviously 5 vitalities listed there. It's a little awkward to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like it's done. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Drury, yes. Commissioner Longstreet and then Councilmember Harmon.
The other thing I would add would be public outreach. The subcommittee should stay together partly to help with the public outreach aspect of it. And somehow we do have to wrap in revisions as needed.
Okay, do we want to put that in as a placeholder right now? Revisions as needed? Okay. Excellent. And Councilmember Harmon?
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. The only comment I was going to make was to ask if we could delete the 5 as well. So appreciate it.
Thank you. And I mean, wow, that was fast. Any other comments on the recommended language, Mr. Hess?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the only other thing is, while it's not necessarily and has not been a part of this scope yet, we will be re-landscaping as part of the overall project, the front of City Hall. And one of the things that we talked about was, which we haven't talked about, which I think falls under site furnishings, is the flags. And so I think putting that the front of City Hall would be a good topic, I think, to add.
Thank you. Do you think that fits under cultural considerations and site furnishings? Sort of the placement of all of those, the flags,
Very well could, yeah.
Armenian plaque, the, honoring Chumash. We can put it as a separate one as well. And is it part of the function of the Plaza Committee to be talking about the front of City Hall? Do you see those as interrelated, or?
Well, I'm not really sure actually,
I'm
because
not sure that I do. Yeah.
I guess it comes more to if we're relocating the Washingtonian palm, if we're relocating flags, if we're putting any additional plaques. But I think one thing we could certainly include that under cultural considerations and site furnishings. So I think that probably meets it. And we are updating council, just so everyone understands, on February 2nd. I'm not sure if that was referenced earlier. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner House first, and then Commissioner Drury.
I too vote for the Oxford commas.
Okay, me too. I was going to get back to it. So after economic, comma, and environmental vitality, if we could. Commissioner Drury.
Yes, is Mr. Hess talking about the Anacapa Street elevation of City Hall?
As the front, yes. I was going to clarify that. We don't think of it as the front.
That is sorely in need of help.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you think it's part of this committee? I think of this committee as being De La Guerra Plaza. The placement of the flags, I think we'll need to definitely talk about. Yeah. Commissioner Longstreet.
It would be helpful to have a committee like this, and we have worked very well together to review the other side. And it does need to all tie in together. So inventing a new committee to me would not be a great idea if we could wrap it up this way.
Sounds good. So I think we do include that in there then, Mr. Hess, and then Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other thing that I don't know what the wording of it is, but the other thing that we've been dealing with throughout this whole exercise and on our committee and through the pandemic is De La Guerra Street. Mm-hmm. And you know, is that something that the committee should look at when that traffic study is when the pandemic's gone and that traffic study is complete?
Absolutely. And also when we get findings on State Street closure,
right?
Or not, the direction of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how to word that in here for purposes of future considerations of maybe for purposes of the following considerations, and then we put cultural, art, site furnishings, public outreach, De La Guerra Street.
Street use of De La Guerra and State Street.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important because those will tie in. Yeah.
Very important. I mean, we can hope that any consideration of State Street considers the plaza, but I think the plaza has earned the place of let's have it be the plaza, and then around State Street, around the plaza, how does it tie in there, and especially
how is it all integrated together? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So did we get that in there?
No, not yet. Could you help me out?
Public outreach, comma, after public outreach.
Yeah.
Are connecting street changes? I don't know.
The connectivity and integration of State Street and De La Guerra Street. How about that? Does that work?
I think so. Commissioner Longstreet, did you have a comment there?
I was not going to be so specific, but to say future traffic studies.
Does that include
traffic studies?
Mr. Drury?
The idea of,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. You just talked to myself, but I like the idea of being specific because it's just that one block connecting State and Anacapa. And I think we need to be very careful what happens there. Thank you.
Should we include Anacapa Street there also, or no? We'll keep it at State Street?
No, I don't think so. No.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the time for any other thoughts about what we might have future committee meetings about. So we have art, cultural considerations, the site furnishings, public outreach, absolutely. Connectivity and integration of State Street and revisions as needed. I think that covers all that we might want to discuss in the future. Does anybody else have any additions to that?
I think we were, Madam Chair, were we asked to take a vote on this, I think, actually?
Oh, I think we
a roll
will,
call vote.
yeah. Yeah, I think someone will have to move the recommendation and someone will have to second it, and we'll take one of the few formal votes we have on this committee. I just want to make sure we're ready. If there are any other last additions, on number 2, we do need to delete the semicolon and at the end and make it a period. And maybe instead of we make it the committee. What's that?
And add the Oxford comma after economic in comment 2 as well.
Yes, thank you. And then do we want that to be we, or do we want it to be the committee finds? Or
I think it should be the committee finds.
Yes.
The committee further finds.
Further finds, yes.
Yeah.
Even better.
Okay.
I was going to add that, but I figured I've done enough wordsmithing here.
Mhm.
But Madam Chair, we can still have a discussion on this after a motion, but I would be pleased to just make the motion that this is the language.
Okay. Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Second that motion.
And Commissioner Drury seconds. So we can still have discussion if there's any further discussion. I would like to say this has been a phenomenal working group. We have representatives from all different areas of the city, and we really have come together and given voice, and I think honored the process, but also really honored the vitalities that we came up with, and particularly the flexibility and honoring cultural heritage. And I will just say that as this goes out for public review, that it's subject to change quite a bit, and we want that. This is our starting place, and this is not intended to be the ending place. This is a concept that we're putting out for review, and we're likely to receive positive comments and constructive comments and changes to what might be in the future. And I really believe that this committee has done so well in adjusting to the input that we're receiving, and I imagine that we'll continue in that spirit. And it's I'm so impressed with this group, really. So if there are any other, Commissioner Longstreet, you're muted.
I would echo that, and I would hope in the staff report that it's conveyed what a good experience this has been, and how much I have learned from my fellow committee members, and appreciated the input, and that we strongly recommend this goes forward, and that we hope to see this in our lifetime. Since this is my second round of doing this, I'd really like to see it happen this time. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Drury, and then Vice Chair Wiscombe. Yes.
Under discussion, I would just like to, while I have the opportunity, to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season.
Thank you. To you as well.
Thank
Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo your comments, and I also want to thank staff and the consultants. I think you've just done a marvelous job moving us along and giving us choices. And I too think this committee has been great. I'm totally honored to serve on it, and it's been a delightful experience. Unlike some committees, but this has been, this has been, I can hear Commissioner Drury laughing in the background.
Yes.
But thanks to everyone. I really think I'm just very appreciative. Thank you.
And are there any further comments before we take a roll call vote? Dr. Peterson.
I just wanted to make a quick announcement. I also really enjoyed this process and working with everyone. I want to thank Tony at City TV, who I think is a panelist today. He's currently transferring a VHS tape version of the 1999 Plaza de la Guerra Reconsidered Symposium that was at City Hall to make an MP4 file, digital file that the trust is going to upload onto our website. So I'll make sure to announce that link when it's ready. And for those of you who'd like to revisit that day-long symposium that became the Plaza de la Guerra Reconsidered book, it will be available for everyone to watch.
Certainly.
Oh, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. It looks like we're ready for a roll call vote.
Okay, motion to approve by Vice Chair Wiscombe, seconded by Commissioner Drury. I'll start from top. Chair Sneddon?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiscombe?
Yes.
Commissioner Drury?
Yes.
Commissioner Howes?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Longstreet?
Yes.
Councilmember Harmon?
Yes.
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Committee Member Peterson?
Yes.
And Committee Member Edelman? Thank you.
Well, with that unanimous recommendation and the last of this year, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for everything.
Bye. We'll see you in